As a first video, or lecture I assume, I figured it would be fitting to talk about something important, something large, if you would. The topic at hand is suffering, and why it happens. Ooh, big question, I know. Big question, convoluted answer. This answer is based on my own life and my teachings from a Christian background. Simply enough, human beings have a complicated nature. I'll be approaching this from a Christian background, as I said, with the belief that God exists and He allows suffering to happen. People often make the claim that if God existed and God loved all of us, He would not allow us to be in pain. Cancer would not happen, disease wouldn't happen, war wouldn't happen, because if God was infinitely loving, God wouldn't allow this to pass. After all, what kind of father or mother or any sort of parent, worth the title, would allow the child to come to harm? It's a valid point in one sense, but it's also very ignorant of the fact that while no parent wants to see their child come to harm, no parent, human anyway, is capable of preventing all that harm. Even in cases where you do prevent your child to never be hurt, well, let's think about it. If you came across a person walking down the street and you talked to them, and they had never known pain, had never been disappointed, been upset, and had always been filled by happiness their entire lives, what would they do? They would be the most boring, bland, undeveloped people ever. They wouldn't want to study. They wouldn't have studied. There would be no passion in them, no drive. They would not know what it's like to be in love. They would not know what it's like to be a friend. They would be, for objective points and purposes, completely dull and spoiled brats. Just like a parent can't and shouldn't prevent all harm from coming to their child, God can't and shouldn't prevent all harm from coming to us. Yes, He could have made the world work in such a fashion where we would have wanted to be happy and be productive, and where we could infinitely be happy. But then I ask the point of, if everyone's always happy, then why even be happy? It's the contrast, you see, that makes it special. You can't be happy without knowing what sadness is. You can't be comfortable without knowing pain. It's a simple fact of what happiness is. Now, while I too wish that cancer didn't exist, disease didn't exist, death didn't exist, it's the way it is because those things limit us in one fashion, but they're also why life matters. If we were immortal, then we wouldn't care about today. If there was no pain, we wouldn't care about other people at all. If there was no hunger, we would never eat and enjoy the actual happiness that comes along with a full stomach. If there was no suffering, there would be no bliss. You can't have one side of the coin without the other, unfortunately. This brings up another point, actually, where God can make something impossible. The belief that God can just make one side of the coin, and that'll be it. I would like to point out something very silly. This connects to the question of God can do the impossible. Can God make a rock so heavy he cannot move it? No, he can't. That's nonsense. In the words of C.S. Lewis, nonsense is still nonsense, even before God. A paradox is still a paradox is still a paradox. An impossibility is still an impossibility. God can make every possible thing happen, but he can't make an impossible thing happen. They're impossible for a reason. They can't happen. Even with God. Presenting nonsense to God is still presenting nonsense. God can't make a one-sided coin, just like there can't be a four-sided triangle. Just like there can't be a wall with one side, or a human being, as we know a human being, without life. Thinking of a human being, laughing, enjoying themselves, all of these other things, without said human being, without said person being alive, is just silly. It's impossible. It is intrinsically impossible for a human being to live and not be alive. Just like it is intrinsically impossible for there to be a four-sided triangle, it is similarly intrinsically impossible for there to be happiness without no counterbalance, without no suffering. You can have a world with no suffering, but that would make there be no happiness either. If you have comments or questions, just post them. Comment on this page. If you want to yell at me for not fixing my laptop and my webcam, don't bother, I know it's broken. Have a good day, everyone.